I firstly want to say a massive thanks to Kim for approaching me, and I'm really flattered, and I hope today I can give you some kind of insight to the world of Aviva Stadium and what goes on behind the big glass spaceship that it looks like. So without further ado, there we go. So that yoke up there is me. Suspiciously looking like a boy actually, which I blame my mother for. But I'm about 3 or 4 there. You may not be able to tell, but I'm actually at an event. It was my sister's sale of work. About 7 people arrived and, I remember it, which is kind of why it's there. Now, if I ever win a work Oscar or some such, I'll obviously say that it was that moment that I realised I was destined. That was not the case. I was there for the popcorn, basically. But I kind of left it up there because the events industry is such a mad place, and it's a big array of people. And about 4 years after that, I opened a hotel in my dining room, and I had a booking forms. I was the chef, the head of concierge, head of reception. My teddies were the staff. I was pretty tough on them, actually. They didn't get breaks. There was a deluxe and a deluxe room. That was it. And I remember it, and I had a fake phone, and I guess maybe it did start then, but again, I'm really just practicing the Oscar, event speech. However, after all that, when I became a grown-up, my first kind of introduction to the world of events was in the Four Seasons, which is rest in peace, Four Seasons in Ireland at the minute. It was a really fabulous experience. I worked there through college. I did a degree in culinary arts, so when I say there's an array of people in this industry, I mean it. Mine, like most people, I think, was a winding road. Started off with one thing, ended up in a very different place. But I did. I started off in the Four Seasons, and God, if I'm ever talking to students now, I always really encourage them to start off in a 5-star hotel. Really knocks the edges off you, makes you super polite, and notice things that you would never notice, and staff is not an issue, and there's 4 people to every 1 person, and it's just absolutely, it was amazing for me, and I like to think that I've carried those service standards with me, although maybe not in my own house. My first big girl job then, for real, I was, Porky can attest to this, I was in Guinness Storehouse and I was 23, and I worked on the event sales team there, and I was there for like 6-7 years, which at that time kind of went through the recession, was kind of unheard of. A lot of my friends went traveling, I stuck through it. It was, again, an amazing place to work. I laugh now, if I'm honest, so I'm mostly in event sales now and event management, and I'll kind of go into that shortly. It was an amazing place to work because we thought we were so good. I realise now, the Guinness Storehouse, of which there is one of, it wasn't us. It was everything else around us. Like, we just won everything. But actually, it was, at that time, it probably made me super confident, and it was a really, really great experience. After that, totally changed lanes and went to Verve, the live agency, who are kind of a pure event management and activation agency. I think when I was there was only maybe 30 people working there. I think they're up at 60 now, and they have a really nice array of clients. Including Google, Coke, Diageo, to name a few. The highlights while I was there about 2 years. The highlights for me were one of 2. I got to go back to Guinness Storehouse when Brewhouse 4 opened, which was a 4-day-long event between a family day, the official opening, which was more government and officials, and then a party for all the staff at St. James's Gate. And the owner of Verve, Ronan, gave me Guinness Storehouse as a gift, essentially, to look after all the production of that. So I got to do all the things in Guinness Storehouse that I've been begging to do for 7 years. There was never a budget. So it was really fantastic and a really great 2 years there. Learned a lot that I am carrying with me. Last but not least, I am with Aviva Stadium now, 4.5 years. In terms of the role, it's actually much more similar to what I was doing in Guinness Storehouse. It's event sales and event management. The biggest thing I can tell you about venue life versus hotel life is, more often than not for everything, but if you book an event with the hotel, you often deal with the salesperson, and once the ink is dry on the contract, you get passed over perhaps to an event manager, and they'll carry you on. And in the venues that I have worked in, if you ring me on a Monday morning and have an inquiry, you are stuck with me until the day of your event, and then I hand you over to an event manager. I rather it that way. I still get to dip my toe into the event management bit, but I guess unlike Verve, it's more 9 to 5. I've given talks actually on agency life versus venue life, and they're incredibly different. I'm very sympathetic to people that are still in agency. It's 24 hours. In venue, you just have maybe a better work-life balance, but not as much involvement, and that can be hard to let go of as well. So moving on to Aviva Stadium. It looks like Aviva threw up on this slide, so bear with me. Working in a stadium or in Aviva Stadium, and this is not just true of Aviva Stadium, but the question I maybe get asked a lot, or I think my dad thinks that I work for the RFU, and people think I just fan myself with tickets at my desk. I wish I did. The structure, as simply as I can, without going into an hour and 15 minutes, is the FAI and the RFU got married. And for 411 million euro, with some government money and then 50-50 between them both, they built Aviva Stadium. It was torn down in 2007 and opened in 2010. They created a third company because they don't run stadiums, called New Stadium Limited, which essentially is Aviva Stadium. And in 2008, have I lost you yet? In 2008, Compass Group, who I work for, are one of the biggest catering companies in the world. They were awarded the contract to run the day-to-day management of Aviva Stadium for 21 years. And we, created, so go below, we created a brand called Aviva Stadium Meeting and Events, which is what we operate on day-to-day. The other then logos are to do with the FAI, obviously have 3 is their sponsor. There are a few have Vodafone. Aviva Insurance is obviously our namesake. Hello, is obviously our namesake and naming rights sponsor, which has been extended, which is incredible. And then the FAI and there are a few have 2 separate hospitality partners called CSL and the Hospitality Partnership, who would sell all the hospitality on match day. And that's it. And etc. Don't forget, Aiken, MCD, Leinster. It's just basically a lot of people to keep happy on any given day, match day in particular. The way I've kind of structured this presentation is to give you a taster of what is involved in match day and then what we do on non-match day. So that kind of gives you an idea of match day at Aviva Stadium. If I'm really honest, when I started in Aviva Stadium, I applied all the same logic that I'd learned in Guinness Storehouse and kind of tried to put a circle into a square. And it's match day that reminds you of why it's different, that it's a super emotive place, that it kind of, no offence to the gentlemen, or ladies actually, but I've seen a lot of grown men cry in Aviva Stadium, more so than I ever did in Guinness Storehouse. So it reminds you of what it means to people to be there and kind of and what some clients are trying to recreate when they come in. So I'll now move on to Compass Group, so the person that pays my paycheck. Compass Group are this massive organisation. You shouldn't really know who they are. They're really a white label brand. They are chameleons. They take on a client's brand. Some of the places that we operate from a sports and leisure perspective are, as you can see, Chelsea, Wimbledon, the O2, Somerset House, Páirc Uí Chaoimh in Cork, the Kia Ova, Twickenham and the Jockey Club. And again, the Jockey Club would encompass the likes of Epsom, Newmarket and Cheltenham, which is the biggie. I'm really lucky because as part of my role, this is where I would pull support from and expertise from, and we share a lot of best practices across the board. My boss today is at a strategy day with all kind of her level. I go to quarterly sales meetings, and we all just get together and talk about the challenges that we have in Stadia life, which are often very similar across the board. So Compass in general then, we operate in over 50 countries. We serve 100,000 meals each year just across Ireland. We employ 4,000 people, 55 million euros on Irish produce. My favourite being, and I won't tell you the story now, but let's talk about it later, is Compass Group approached a particular farmer and asked him to basically grow a particular type of potato that was going to become extinct in Ireland. I know, we're amazing. And so we exclusively buy all his potatoes that otherwise were not being grown in Ireland. But there's an amazing video actually on the Compass website if you have any interest in potatoes. I would strongly recommend that you go and have a look at it. I mean, I wasn't until then, you know. So to home back to Aviva Stadium, we are 52,000 seater capacity. My favourite tweet to see on a match day is, particularly from a foreign fan, is did they forget to build the North Stand? Didn't forget. It's just if they had, they would have plunged all the houses there into eternal darkness. So if that had been there, we would have been kind of competing with Croke Park sizes, so up around the 80,000. Hospitality, so that is the posh boxes on a match day. We serve anything between 2,500 and 3,500 people, depending on what fixture's on. Ireland and England, and obviously most recently the All Blacks in New Zealand were kind of up at that 3,500. There's 36 corporate boxes, 7 hospitality suites, 26 food kiosks, that's burger and a pint stuff, and 2 restaurants on premium level and 29 bars. Now I apologise in advance actually because this slide, okay, it doesn't look as bad as I thought. I thought it was going to be too distorted. These are just some fun facts or figures that we had to put together for a conference kind of in the middle of last year. But we had at that point done 33,000 covers, 28,000 auxiliary covers. So that means, you know, the production guys on the day, the guards, the medics, you know, the staff of the team, all of these people that you really don't think of if you were sitting at home on your couch, and I didn't think of until I started working there. Again, some fun facts on the teas and coffees, soft drinks, etc. Part of our job is data analysis, and we do a huge amount of it, and we have a bank of information that we launch into every match with. So what that really means is, depending on who we're playing, so football, rugby, split it down. The fans are wildly different and their requirements are wildly different. So in advance of any fixture, we look to that fixture and we try and find the fixture that matched it the most. Whether that be, you know, what stage of the Six Nations is at. Is it an opening game or a closing game? Is it on a Saturday or on a Sunday? Is it at 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock? What's the weather going to be like? I mean, I cannot tell you the level of detail that we're tracking all along. Now, it's crystal ball stuff as well, because some things you just can't plan for, but essentially what we're trying to do is how many staff do we need, how many burgers do we need to order, and how many bars do we need to have open. And that is such a movable feast that we get it right most of the time, but not all of the time. And it is always a learning process and always kind of documented and rehashed time and time again. Some of the most interesting things, shock horror, that I can tell you is that All Blacks game when Ireland beat them was the highest spend per head that we'd ever had for a fixture ever in the stadium's history. That includes Ireland-England games, which have often been, you know, crunch games. It's not really a surprise, I guess, but it was a very historic day and really amazing to be there. Lots of men were crying that day, let me tell you. To do all of the above, to give you a bit of insight, we would have about 12,000 staff in the building. We have about 2,500 on the books. by the nature of it, it's incredibly transient, and that is, I would say, the biggest challenge that we have as a stadium, is to try and retain staff, to try and train them to the level of where we want them. But it's really difficult, and we have a full-time team doing it, which I was shocked by when I started. That 1,200 staff is made up of about 850 people across all the retail and kiosks, and this is burger and pint bit, and about 330 are in the hospitality, so the posh boxes upstairs. The other fact that we actually only came across this year, but it shocked us, if I'm honest, but isn't surprising, we just didn't think it was so high, is that 71% of our staff is under 25, and so by its nature incredibly transient. We can't offer them full-time work. We can kind of through November, and we try and retrain them that. We do incentives to stay, we incentivise them to come back then for the Six Nations, but inevitably they end up working in Topshop or something, and it's heartbreaking because we do 2 recruitment days and we bring them in for 2 full days training, of which they're paid for, and so it's really difficult. And agency staff isn't always the answer because you don't always know what you're getting there either, and it's obviously more expensive. So these are the joys that we try and overcome. I'm going to move on now and totally change tact, if you will let me, to the meeting and events side of the business. So none of the sexy match day stuff. When the matches aren't on, we essentially operate like a hotel without bedrooms, maybe someday. And I manage a team of 6 sales executives, and we look after all the reactive and proactive sales of the building. Because the reality is we're only a stadium kind of anything between 10 and 20 times a year, depending on concerts and fixtures and how well the Irish football team are doing when they beat Germany that wild time in 2016. But the rest of the time we need to fill it, we need bums on seats, and that is essentially my biggest target day to day. So what I've done is, rather than show you how we do it, but just tell you some about the kind of really interesting events or kind of challenging events that we've done over the last couple of years. First of which was Eons and IPOS, 2 conferences that ran concurrently over 6 days back in 2016. Over 5 days. You name it, they needed it. They needed obviously conference space, and so plenary for 500 to 600 people with numerous parallel sessions and an art exhibition area. 150 poster boards and 30 exhibitors, and of course then different healthy menus that were filling. Those 2 words don't always go together. That needs to be different every day and keep people interested. So I've just put together a collection of pictures, basically. We worked with Abby on this, so Abby would be one of our larger agents that bring in a huge amount of international business to Ireland. And this one in particular, as I said, took over most of the spaces. So this, if you've been to Aviva Stadium on the atrium, level 3 west side, this is the atrium area. So, but not as you've maybe seen it if you've only been in for a match day. We built poster boards around pillars, all the art exhibition was put above on the 4th floor. We really utilised every bit of space that we could. Behind those poster boards, the back of the photo is what is usually the bar. This is the President's area. On a match day, it's where we do carvery, basically. It's a walk-in carvery. During the day, it's one of our kind of largest areas that can do about 1,200 people for a dinner and about 1,000 people theatre style. This particular room was set up for 550. That's it from another angle. The next event that I picked up on was SAP. We're 20 years in Ireland the year before, and we worked with Grooveyard on it. Grooveyard are similar in how they operate to Verve, and the fact that they do more event management, whereas Abbey tend to look after obviously event management, but a DMC, a PCO, bringing in international clients from abroad. And so this particular event was for 2,000 people. It was unusual because they all arrived hungry off coaches at lunchtime. And most like corporate gigs that we do want a stadium to feel like a 5-star hotel. And they wanted to recreate a match day feeling with only 2,000 people in it. So that was the challenge there. And so everyone had their lunch at like 2:00. We did a Pied Piper down to the seats, and they basically did what I can only describe as kind of a late show style chat show pitch side, which looked like this. So it was amazing. They all got SAP United scarves. It was brilliant. Like, and the global CEO was there, who came out of like the players' tunnel. You know, they had music. No one seemed to be concerned about the weather but me. But we were blessed. They got ponchos. But we were blessed with the weather that day. And then they used the pitch screens to do their talk. So that was a really particularly amazing event. They brought in entertainment of, you know, these are like super duper football skills with the Z, that performed while we were waiting. So it was a really fun day. Then, of course, it didn't end there. All 2,000 Pied Pipers back into the building where they had their dinner, and they essentially took over level 3 and had different styles of entertainment all around, and people could wander where they wanted. Ooh. It was also, as I said, a gorgeous day, thank God, and so they were all out at the podium as well. I'm sure all of you know event management doesn't always go to plan, no matter how much planning you do. We didn't plan for it to be as sunny as it was. We didn't plan for there to be about 1,000 people out in that podium. And so within about 20 minutes, we made makeshift bars across that entire area, beers, wine, soft drinks, and a decision was made, and that's what happened. And if you're working in event management, you know, that is what you do. I think at one point I was like carrying, you know, bottles under my arm, and that was it. Most recent event that I kind of picked out on today is one that we did last summer for, if you've ever heard of Techies for Temple Street. This is a really cool event. I kind of wish I was more involved in the tech world, but it's usually done in the RDS, and actually they've returned to the RDS this year. I don't think they had their date last year, actually. But essentially, tech companies are invited to this super duper tech, you can tell I'm not in the tech world, tech event, but essentially it's a treasure hunt where they came to Aviva Stadium, again, pitch side, got given their briefing of what they had to do, started out, roamed the city, and then came back to us for a barbecue. So that was the start. Off they went. Again, they were all pitch side, all in their yellow across the city. That was them getting their briefing all across the city. And as I said, all back for their barbecue for 2,000 people. So I'm going to finish up there. I hope I've given you some kind of insight to a year in the life of the stadium. I could go on for ages, not just because of my personality, but because there's so much to talk about. Didn't even touch on food this time. But if you have any questions or you'd like more information, feel free to nab me afterwards, and I hope I can help you. But thank you very much for listening, and it was a pleasure.